I'm Nancy Ellen Thompson, and this is part 2 of our loose and juicy painting of flowers on a wall. So part 1 is going to be found on my YouTube channel, Nancy Ellen Thompson. You can go back and look at that before you look at this one. And then we're just going to take this one all the way through to the end. When we do this, there's going to be a little bit of jiggling of the camera and stuff like that. It'll be fine. This is the second time we've done this, so we're experimenting and hope it works out fine. So I'm going to move over here right now, and we're going to work with our photograph and our sketch, which we did in the first one, and I'm got a little arrow here to indicate where the light's coming from. And then this is our first washes and the first part of the painting. Now over here, I'll move this so maybe you can see it a little better. Is this good, Dick? Okay. I have raw sienna and new gamboge, and I have permanent alizarin crimson and permanent rose. I have cobalt blue and Windsor blue red shade. And over here in the corner, I have a little bit of burnt sienna. I do use that quite a bit also. So those are the main colors that I use, and they are Winsor Newton professional colors. They're not the student grade. And the reason I do that, you say, well, I'm a student. But the reason I do this is because if you don't start off with good tools, good paper, I'm using Arches on a block. Arches 140 cold press. And I've got my little trusty rag here. And I've got this propped up just a little bit, just so that I will know where the water is when we're working loose and juicy. This is my photograph, and I just saw it hanging on a wall. I know it's simple, but that's the way I like to start things. This is going to be more of a color sketch than a completed painting, but to me, that's the way I start. And then I decide if I like it, and then I may make it into a larger painting. So here we go. Always keep your reference work close. As you can see, I've changed the shadows. I have them a little bit longer. At first, when I sketched it, I had them coming down this way with the light this direction. But now I'm telling myself, I've got a lot of unused space over here. It might be nice to have a little bit of an interesting pattern. So here we go. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is to go sharpen up some of these flowers and leaves. When you first put it down, you don't want everything to be exact. So I'm going to come back in. I'm going to use a little bit of permanent rose. I'm going to use a little bit of new gamboge and put it here. Make a little bit more orangey. And I'm going to come back in and I'm going to start separating some of these little petals. And you don't have to go around the edge and make sure everything's perfect. Everybody knows that these are flowers. So you don't have to shout it to them that it's flowers. Just have it be nice and loose and juicy. And as you can see, I might put some color down, but then I also might take some up. Watch. If the light's coming this direction, you know, it's going to be a little lighter up in here. And I just take a drier brush and pick some of that paint up. All right, let's pick up some more here. And the center is a little bit of a yellow, so I'm going to avoid that. Put an extra little petal out here. And I'm probably going to make this a little bit larger than I started because when I started out, I kind of sketched it a little bit small. So let's see what we can do here. Now I'm going to add a little bit of cobalt blue, and that makes a beautiful purple with permanent rose. And it really is a nice shadow color for these. I'm going to work as quickly as I can. Now you can stop your video and go do this. You don't have to, frantically try to keep up. That's the nice thing about watching it on a video. I want some of them light. I want some of them darker. And if I even want them darker yet, I'll add a little bit of cobalt to them here and there and let that be my shadow color. Now remember, watercolor dries 40% lighter. And one of the things that's the hardest thing about watercolor is to get it to look rich and to get some nice, good values. And by values, I mean lights and darks. Don't just have it all a pale, pale little painting. I want them lighter up higher because I don't want a lot of information up here on the side of the painting. I want it right in here where my center of interest is. I'm actually pushing it a little by having the number plate for the doorway, which is over here, and putting that out here on the side, but that's okay. It was what drew me to this, to paint this. I just love the number plate. I like the flowers, and off we go. And I'm just making some marks that are a lot like petals. That's one of the ways you can keep it fun and loose and juicy. I'm going to work on the leaves next, and as you can see on the cyclamen, there's, it's a light green and a dark green. And then, of course, your shadows are your darkest green. So I'm going to make my green, and I'm going to use New Gamboge. And normally, what makes the prettiest greens is New Gamboge and the Winsor Blue Red shade. But this time I want more of a subtle green. I don't want a bright spring green. So I'm going to use my cobalt here. And I'm going to start off with it light again. And I'm just actually going a little darker. I had it light, but I'm going and putting this around the edge. And a little bit here and there. This isn't a botanical painting, and those friends of mine that are botanical painters, I always have to say that. Because I don't want you to get so involved with all the minutia that you don't enjoy the painting. Okay, we're getting there. Let's jump over here and do a few of these. The outside edge is pretty clear, but then we just kind of fudge around the sides to make it look like the cyclamen. Now you notice I'm using an awfully big brush. Whenever it gets too much for you when you're using a big brush, step down. But don't start off with a little brush thinking that you can't paint the painting with a larger brush. It's just so nice because you have it loaded. You don't have to keep going back. It's wonderful. All right, let's see. Here we go. We're going to come around here And come around here. And you can kind of look at the way the edges of these are. So if you flood this and make it nice and juicy, then you can kind of pull it in and use the tip of your brush, and here you go. Now let's do the center and pull out. You pull a line down and then pull out. Let's put another one in here. And these are just going to be some shapes that I'm using. And another one back here. And then we've got this little big one down here in the front. So let's give him a little bit of attention. Now later on, when this is dry, if I feel like they're too dominant in any way, or I can come back in. I can work on them again. I just don't have to do it all right this second. So I'm going to let this dry before I do anything more to it. Okay. Now I'm going to come to the pot. You wonder maybe why is she going to go ahead with that when this is still a little wet? I kind of like things to bleed together when I'm painting loose and juicy. So I'm going to start off with some burnt sienna for my pot. Nice juicy puddle of burnt sienna. Can you see that? No? Okay, can you scroll over this way just a little bit, spin this way a little bit so you can see that? All right, so here's my burnt sienna from over here in the corner. And that's going to be a pretty color for a terracotta pot. I also love using the permanent rose to make my terracotta. It gives it a little bit more life. And then I like the raw sienna. Those of you that have been with me in workshops before, you know that the way you tell the difference between the two, this came originally, this clay would come from Siena, Italy. And when it came out of the ground, it was, or off the side of the riverbank, it was raw sienna. And it was kind of a yellowish color. When they used it to make pots and they burnt it, it turned more like a kind of a brownish color. So that's your burnt sienna. So I'm going to start on this side because this is my light side. I'm going to make this a tad bigger. And maybe you'll know it and maybe you won't. You will know it because you're watching the video. Okay. And I'm pulling down. I'm making this a little bit longer. And always make sure that the bottoms of things that are a cylinder or round have enough of a rounded shape at the bottom. Don't make them totally flat. This is kind of flat because this was almost at eye level. But now I'm going to grab some burnt sienna on my brush. Nice and juicy. It's almost ready to drip off. Can you see that? Look at that. There we go. But it's not going anywhere because this is dry. But when I touch this, it's going to bleed. Now I'm not touching the green totally, but if some of the green bleeds down in here, it's fine. And I'm going to come over to this side and add a little pink, and I'm going to pull it out this way. Now, one of the things I like when I'm doing a pot, whether it's a pot of geraniums or this little pot on the wall, I love making the terracotta color, and I like to use cobalt blue in it for my shadow color. And I'll just put it right in there. I'm going to add a little bit of juice here. Okay. And I'm going to get up underneath of these right here because they're in the shadow. And I'm pulling down, kind of like the little ribs on this, but you're not going to see as much of these ribs here because it's totally in shadow. Put a little shadow up under the leaves. And I'm going to put a little shadow up in here too because there's a leaf here and it would be casting some shadow up in there. Okay. Oh, I'm liking him. Let's put a couple of little... There we go. Now, watercolor is not supposed to be exact. I mean, it can be. And I have seen some incredibly beautiful, extremely realistic paintings that are done in watercolor. I just don't have that patience. I really do envy them the patience that they've got to continue doing something like that. So I'm going to let that dry now. Ooh, we're getting really, really close. Okay. Now, I'm going to work over here, let this dry. Oh, I do want to put in, now I've got another color over here. It's a little bit more opaque. I'm going to put a couple of yellows in, some Aurelian and some lemon yellow mixed on my brush. And I'm going to just come right into the little centers in a couple places. Don't do it everywhere. You don't want to look polka dotty. Come over here to the little terracotta thing here. And I'm just going to mix up a grayish color. And that would be cobalt blue, burnt sienna, a little bit more paint than water, so it's a little bit more, a little bit richer. And here we go. Put this in first. I probably should have put this in last, now that I'm thinking about it. But one of the things you don't want to do is to overdo, if you're doing numbers or writing in your painting, the next thing I like to do after I've painted it is to touch it and pick up some of that paint so that it's not so in your face, because right now we're kind of fighting for attention here. So I'm going to take a piece of paper towel. I like to use the Viva because it doesn't have a quilted pattern on it. And I'm just going to kind of, let's do it this way. Makes it more interesting. Here and there. Okay. Go into my little side shadow here. There we go. Now, this side would be fairly light because the light's coming this direction, so the bottom part would be a little bit darker than what I just did, than this side. So let's add a little bit of blue. And now, I'm going to put these little corners in. I think it'd be nice to have a little bit of just a design. It doesn't have to be anything, you know, just some dibby dabs. Yeah, it's an artistic word. There we go. Okay. Now I should probably bring out a hairdryer, but I hate hair dryers. I really do. So while I'm waiting for this to kind of dry up a little bit so I can do the quick shadow and the wall, again, I'm going to put some darks in here. Now, negative painting is when you paint not the item itself, but kind of what's around it to make it pop. And I'm going to use a little bit of Winsor blue because that's a nice dark color. And a little bit of alizarin here. And I'm going to put in some little tiny marks in between some of these things. And I like to use triangles for my... Nature has lots of triangles in it if you look. Shadows and crisscrosses of twigs and lots of different things. I'm going to put a little bit of something here. Bring my brush off. Now remember, this one is just a fun little sketch. Do one, do two. Let them just be there. Have fun with them. All right. Go back into these flowers just a little while I'm waiting for this to dry. Blow on it a little bit. And I'm doing some negative painting. Let's see. Let me try to get a little bit darker in here. And you see how all of a sudden this is starting to look a little bit more interesting, just because I put some darks in here. Roll my brush and point it back up. I'm using low Cornell brushes. They're kind of a little hard to get right now. I don't know why, but the 70-20. But any good watercolor brush will do. You just need good paper and good paint. Okay, let's take a little bit of over here. Okay, hopefully you're getting a little painting done. And like I said, just stop it. Don't be upset because I'm going too fast. I've just got about 20-30 minutes here and I want to be done. So now, if I get into this right now and this bleeds, I don't think it's going to bother me, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to go to my 1-inch brush, and I always tell my classes that if I only could have one brush the rest of my life, it would have to be a 1-inch flat. Not any particular brand. This one happens to be a Winsor, I think a Winsor Newton. But I can do little marks. I can do big washes. I can do smudging and make neat trees in the background. So it's a great brush to use. Let's see how we're doing here. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start again, and I'm going to kind of paint the background on this really quick. And then while I'm doing that, I'm going to, as I get into this position here, I'm going to start making it a little crisper, and I'm going to put shadows in. I'm not doing a big old black shadow like this. You're the artist, you can change it, but I need more color in here, so let's do this. All right, make sure you're using enough paint. That's such a biggie. And enough water, not just paint. Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm having fun with this. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that, repeat this pink color. I'm going to put a little bit of that in here and there. It just makes this background stucco look a lot prettier. And just make your marks and move along. Don't be afraid of it. I'm already liking it better. Now I'm going to get a little darker. I'm going to add some burnt sienna to my raw sienna. I'm going to keep coming down. Keep your edges wet when you're doing this. You know, if you're going to work here and you see this is starting to dry, just wet it a little bit. All right, a little cobalt now. Now we're going to start getting into the shadow. And I'm going to make kind of a purpley shadow for where I am near the object. I have a couple leaf shadows A few shadows from the flowers. And as I'm coming out, I'm going to get lighter and I am going to get warmer. Now this over here has to have something, so let's get over there and not forget it. This is so much fun. I'm so glad you all joined me today. And I'm going to have, in the next week or so, we're going to try to put together a Zoom. Now that's getting very popular right now, but it had a learning curve with me too. I know it's kind of a little bit rough to learn some of this techie stuff, but you know what? It amuses us and it keeps us happy, and I'm sure you all will have your learning curve with it also. And it's going to be, those are going to be paid classes. They're going to be about 2 hours. It'll be $20, and all the information will be sent to you if you send me an email. And my email is nanthom@mac.com, mac.com. So that's nanthom@mac.com. So if you will send me an email, I will send you an invitation if you like. I'll also, in the information that I send you, so you can decide, there'll be a picture, a photograph of what we're going to do. There'll be a full description, and we will give you an invitation number and password so that you can get on after you have done your, there we go. Yeah, I think that's, what do you think, y'all? Yeah, and I'm going to smudge some of these so they're not quite so bright. See, you don't have to have everything equal importance. Let me get a little bit darker in here. Okay. So if you send me your email and say I'm interested in the Zoom, that's all you have to do. When we get ready to do this, we'll send you a full information about it, and you can decide if you like to do it or not. But there we go. I think, that's a lot of fun. I'll put a finished photograph of this up on my Facebook page, and I hope to see you all when we do the next one. So have happy painting. Bye.